Hello, everybody out there, all four of you. um, all right, so I have no idea where Yevgeny is. Hoping he'll be joining us shortly. If not, it's me. Oh, here he comes. Here he comes. So here we have him. Hello, Slow Coach. How you doing?
What's going on? What's going on? Had a manic drive back home. Got
Oh,
stuck in huge traffic.
oh, were you
Yep.
bombing it?
Apologies.
Turn your volume down a bit, Yevgeny. You're quite loud, I think. Right, so folks, as always, it takes those slow coaches a little bit of time to join us. Harsh is way ahead of the game here. Hey, Harsh, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. So whilst we wait for others to arrive, we will just do our opening spiel thing. Apologies if you've heard it before, but by the time we've finished, hopefully the group will be a little bit larger and we can get going. So, sorry, I'm just checking my other screen. So let me just introduce myself and then Yevgeny will introduce himself, and then we'll move on to explaining to you how the process all works today. So I'm Gigi, if you don't recognize me from the videos, albeit I think I've got about 7 different hairstyles throughout all of those different videos, and hair colors actually, I think throughout all of the different videos. So I am the one and only. I am an ex Amazon bar raiser and hiring manager. I did hundreds of interviews in my time at Amazon, particularly as a bar raiser. And whilst I was bar raising, I started to notice people doing weird things. It's the only way I can describe it. I've tried to think of better ways of articulating that, but I can't really. They were just doing weird things, but people were doing the same weird things, which I thought was weird because they were weird. And it's weird that people do the same weird things. So I started to ask random candidates why they made that strategic decision to say what they said or approach the interview in the way that they did. And they directed me to YouTube. And so, being the curious Amazonian that I was, I went and had a look at YouTube. And at the time, there was a lot less Amazon interview preparation content on YouTube than there is today. And the predominant channels that these candidates sent me to, I had to dig around and kind of identify two things. Either they were made by people who had never worked at Amazon before and were obviously getting their information secondhand. And if you've ever played the telephone game, secondhand information can be dangerous, or perhaps they were people who had definitely recruited or hired in Amazon, but in a very narrow way. So they were giving accurate content, but that accurate content really pertained specifically to particular job families rather than advice that cut across the board at Amazon. So I just decided it really frustrated me. So I just set up a YouTube channel and started putting content out there whilst I was still working at Amazon. I built the channel up, lots of support internally from Amazon. And when I ended my Amazon journey, I thought I would just see whether I could turn this little thing into something to pay the bills. So I launched my own little business, digital courses, providing coaching to people. Amazon Interview Whiz Academy is what it was called. And then I crossed paths with Yevgeny at some point. I realized we were competitors, but we had a common customer who introduced us, and we concluded that we would do better working together rather than working against each other. And hence, we now have the day one careers proposition that we have here for you folks. I will just hand quickly over to Yevgeny. He can briefly tell you his story, and then we'll get on with the housekeeping and get on with the show, because it is indeed a chicken dinner tonight, Yevgeny, again.
Fascinating.
And I'm
That's exactly what I managed to wolf down 5 minutes before I got into the show. By the way, how's the volume right now? Is this okay?
yes, it's good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so folks, I'm Evgeny. So I am the person with whom Gigi's business ended up merging. So my journey was also through Amazon. I was a hiring manager. I was a category leader and an interviewer. I was not a bar raiser. And the way that I got into this whole coaching and interview prep was through running little experiments. So rather than failing candidates who did not do well in the first phone screen, I would use the 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the interview to give them some coaching. And what happened was I gave them some coaching and they did a little bit better during the subsequent stages, like the phone screen 2 and the loop. And now I thought, interesting. If you give people some interview coaching, their interviewing skills improve. So I started coaching first, and then I quit Amazon and went to work at Apple. And while I was at Apple, I basically ran day one careers on top of my Apple job as a side business. And then I met the person who also met Gigi, and she told us that we should merge and speak to each other. And merge we did. And so I decided to do this full time. And hey ho, from Feb 2022, we operate as day one careers altogether.
Cool. So, how this thing is going to work today, it's super simple, folks. You can ask us any question that you like with a little bit of a caveat. The first caveat is don't ask us like really general questions. Hey, Gigi, Evgeny, I've got an interview tomorrow. Any tips? Because we could spend hours and hours just giving you generic tips because we've managed to build a whole channel about it. So, don't ask us very kind of generic, non specific questions. On the other end of the spectrum, we also ask that you don't ask us very specific questions about your functional side of your interview. By functional, I mean any technical questions that you might have if you're a accountant, a software development engineer, a pre-construction engineer, an acoustics engineer, an electric mechanical engineer, any specific question that is about your actual technical side of your skills, I'm afraid we're just not going to be able to answer. There are probably 10,000 job families in Amazon at the moment, and clearly we cannot be technical experts on all of those. Anything in between those two things, we will definitely have a very good go at. So just bear those parameters in mind. The other thing to say is that when you type your question into the little box here on the right-hand side of the page, there are some character limits. So just be aware of that. And if you run out of characters when you're writing your question, just plop a little number at the end of the sentence. So obviously 1 for the first time you run out of characters, and then 2 for the second time you run out of characters, etc., until you manage to get your whole question out. And then we'll be able to track it down in terms of the actual scrolling of the comments. That's it, I believe, in terms of housekeeping. What I will also say is do stay until the very end, folks. We have a really amazing giveaway to give you, funnily enough, at the end of the session. We are very confident that it is the best kind of freebie that you will get as far as Amazon interview preparation. So stay until the end, and we promise you, you will not be disappointed. So with that in mind, then we can turn to answering some questions. So I can see there might be a couple of bits here and there. So we will get going. But please do drop your questions down. We're happy to stay here for the hour. But obviously, if we don't have enough questions, then we'll just wrap up early. So don't be shy. Don't be embarrassed. Any question is fine within the parameters that I just described. And let's get going. So have you had a look, Yevgeny? Have you seen any that we can pick?
Yeah, so we can pick this one. So, hi guys. Why might a job application go from under consideration to application submitted before or after the loop interviews? Not sure what exactly happened. Do you want me to take this while you're looking for the next one to take?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. There could be a million things that happen. The thing is that Amazon has its internal applicant tracking system, hiring system, whatever you want to call it, and then that system plugs into the various different fronts that you can see. One of those fronts is the Amazon.jobs, so the externally facing candidate website. It also plugs into LinkedIn, it plugs into a whole bunch of other systems. And sometimes some actions that are taken internally as the application goes through stages, whatever stages those could be, it triggers different bits and pieces externally. So, if I were you, I would not pay that much attention to those different messages because I mean it's just not within your control, to be honest. So just focus on your preparation, focus on your interviews, and until you get a decision, it's always 50-50. Ignore everything else. That'll be my advice. Anything to add, Gigi?
No, I just find those things really confusing, and they're definitely not used consistently, and they're very prone to error. So I agree, just ignore them. There's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly do this one. So, any tips for customer service lead role at luxury stores? Not specifically. It's not a role that I'm particularly familiar with. I can make a logical conclusion in the same way you can, which is customer obsession is going to be a very important leadership principle. But beyond that, I don't have any specific insight into that particular niche role to be able to give you. My advice would be the same advice that we'll give everyone else on this session today. So sorry, no, can't give you anything specific. That definitely falls into the functional category that I talked about earlier. I'm going to pick the next one, Yevgeny, otherwise that's a little bit of a cop out. So Harsh, so after many days, you followed up the recruiter on a call. She said she will update you in 2 days, but you've had no response or call back. What to do? You also received a thank you for application rejection mail. Okay, now I'm confused. Right, hang on. Let's Never been anxious by any interview. Does this much time is taken to come to a decision? Okay, so I am a little confused because you say that you got a thank you for application rejection mail, and I'm not sure whether the lack of grammar in there is confusing me and whether you're just telling me you've got a thank you for your application and then you're asking me, is that a rejection mail? So I'm going to assume that's the case and we've just got some grammar confusion here. So with that being the assumption, I would not assume that because you haven't heard back, it's an automatic rejection. There are lots of different reasons why the teams don't meet their SLA and why people promise to call you back and don't call you back. I always say it's a saying, it's never over until the fat lady sings, which is apparently an opera saying. I don't know why that sticks with me, but it does. It's not over until it's over, right? So until someone actually reaches out to you, Harsh, and says thank you for your application, but no, we're going to be moving on with a different candidate, then it's still all to play for. So move on with your life. There's nothing you can do about it now. I know it's hard not to spend time thinking about this and wondering what's happening, but there's nothing you can do about it. So keep going with your job hunting. If you're still interviewing for other companies, keep working on your preparation and doing mock interviews. And I would contact your recruiter back probably, I don't know, once a week until you get that answer from them. But feel free to keep contacting them, but I wouldn't read anything into their lack of comms. It could be everything's delayed, or it could be you've been rejected. Who knows? So unfortunately, you're just going to have to move on and just keep pressing them to get that answer. Anything to add, Evgeny?
No, all good. Let's move on. So it is 6 days enough time to prep for the loop? And how many stories should I prepare for 5 loop interviews? Thank you. So I would say 6 days is enough, but it is on the shorter side. I mean, we recommend a week to a week and a half to those candidates who are preparing using our materials. So I would say, obviously, depending on what you're using and how you're prepping, but I would say 6 days is enough, but it is on the short side. And then in terms of how many stories should I prepare for 5 loop interviews? So we recommend at least 2 stories per leadership principle, assuming that your 5 loop interview is entirely behavioral, which is something, by the way, that you can check with your recruiter. Let's just assume that it's entirely behavioral. So what does it give us? So it's 5 interviews. It's two leadership principles per interview. So that's 10 LPs. So at least 2 stories per LP. So that's 20 stories. Within those 20 stories, you can have some stories that overlap at the basic context. So you can have one real life work situation and squeeze, let's say, 2 stories out of it, but they need to be on different leadership principles. So that would be my guidance. What about you, Gigi? Anything you'd add?
Just to add, you can't predict what those 10 leadership principles are going to be. There are 6 that you won't have show up at your debrief, at your loop. So we would recommend, and someone talks about it in a minute in a question I'm going to pull up, that you contact your recruiter and ask your recruiter if they can share with you what those key leadership principles are going to be, and that could allow you to focus your preparation. Otherwise, it's two answers for 16 leadership principles, which is actually 32. So it would be much nicer not to have to prepare for 32. So I would ask your recruiter. You can also go through your job description and see if you can pick out the language that indicates certain leadership principles from your job description. There is a video on the YouTube channel. I think there's two videos on the YouTube channel that have me showing you how to do that. So you can watch those videos and see if you can pick up the knack from those videos. And if you still haven't got anything from the recruiter and you don't think you can work it out from those videos, I do provide a service where I can do that for you. But overall, two examples per leadership principle is the answer. The question you're going to have to answer is, do I need to prepare for all 16 leadership principles, or can I narrow it down to 10? Okay, so let me pick this one. So, got a ride, JG. Can we discuss how the loop interview is different from the first couple of screening interviews? Okay, so there are a few answers to this one. So, it differs by team because teams have quite a lot of flexibility around how they mix behavioral interviews and, or should I say, behavioral questions and functional questions. So in the early rounds, some teams might choose their phone screen one to be purely technical slash functional, and might include a phone screen two, which is a behavioral, and then move into the loop. And in the loop, they'll do a mix of functional and behavioral. They might have 50-50 across all of the interviewers in the loop, or they might assign functional and behavioral to individual interviewers in the loop. Other teams might use the early phone screen one to have a combo of technical slash functional and behavioral, and phone screen two to do another combo of functional and behavioral. Other teams may only have one phone screen before loop, and they may choose to dedicate that one phone screen either exactly to completely to behavioral, completely to technical, or a mix of technical and behavioral. So it is literally impossible to tell you exactly how, in your particular use case, the early rounds are going to differ from the loop. In theory, in theory, it's supposed to be exactly the same, right? In theory, the standard is meant to be as high to get through phone screen one as it is to get through loop. The reality is, because hiring managers or team members don't have perhaps the oversight of a bar raiser in the early phone screen rounds, they tend to be a little bit more generous in terms of moving people through to the next round than they would be able to be at loop. So I think one big difference is just the level of the standard that you need to meet in order to effectively make it through that stage gate. The other key difference is really around the tell me about yourself, why Amazon, things that we call hygiene questions. Those hygiene questions, when you come to a loop, are not meant to be submitted as evidence. Why your reason for wanting to join Amazon is not permitted to be used in debrief. You're there, you've interviewed, you've put the commitment in. It's not anyone on Amazon's side's place to judge whether that is a good reason or a not good reason to join Amazon. However, over the course of the years, the tell me about yourself, why Amazon hygiene questions have become more important in the phone screens than really they were ever intended to be. So we recommend to people that in the early phone screens, they actually do put quite a lot of effort into crafting those pitches for tell me about yourself and why Amazon. But by the time you get to loop, you really need to summarize those up quite quickly and quickly get to the real questions that are going to be used for your assessment and calibration, which are the technical questions and the behavioral questions. I think that's it. Is there anything else that you would add to that, Evgeny, in terms of the differences between early rounds and loops?
No, that's exactly what it is.
Cool. Do you want to pick the next one then?
Yeah, cool. Okay, so this one is, I was listening to some of your courses and heard that you say it's good to ask the recruiter about the LP. Should that VBE, should that be before the meeting with the hiring manager? One. Um, yes. I mean, presumably, if things go the way that they normally go, you meet the recruiter first. I mean, you might have another meeting after the phone screen as a prep call slash check in on package expectations. But yeah, as soon as you can, essentially, ask them as soon as you can. Um, you can't go wrong with asking. The worst that will happen is they won't be able to tell you, or they will refuse to tell you, or they don't know. But I would say don't ask. Should you ask the hiring manager about what LPs are critical for this role? I don't know. I would ask them.
Um,
What would you do? What would your advice?
so you can. There's another sneaky way of doing it, which is around if you really want to know the LPs that the hiring manager cares about the most, you can ask the hiring manager what are their favorite leadership principles, because you can guarantee if they're their favorite leadership principles, those are the leadership principles that they're going to be quite interested in when it comes to debrief. So I'm not sure, I wouldn't advise against asking them, what are the key. I think one of the YouTube videos talks about asking them what are the key behaviors that you would want to be successful in this role, as a slightly more finesse way of asking what the key leadership principles are. So I think either of those three are probably quite good options to get you a little bit more insight. But the first place you should definitely go to, Evgeny's point, is the recruiter.
Well, there's another variation that I sometimes advise, and that is you basically tell the hiring manager that like if you're selected, you really want to do well. And so, as someone who understands the business and the team, like for someone to do really well in this job, what are those leadership principles that they absolutely have to knock out of the park? See what they say.
Yeah, that's a good version as well. So there are a few sneaky ways
Mm.
of asking that question, some more direct than others. Okay, I'll just pick this one. I don't think I quite understand this one, so I might ask you to rephrase that. So, Shri, you're saying, sure, most people want to work for Amazon. I'm not sure I would actually agree with that statement, but okay. Should we understand the culture fit first? Right. It seems only a certain person seems to succeed at Amazon. Am I wrong? Okay. So, Shri, I do understand now. So, you're asking whether you should try and understand what it's like to work at Amazon before you apply for Amazon. Yeah, I would say that's true of any organization that you apply for a job with. You should do whatever you can to try and understand what it's like to work in those organizations. The great thing about organizations like Amazon or Google or Apple or Microsoft is there are a billion people out there willing to share their opinions with you on what it's like to work at those organizations. You can just follow them on LinkedIn, and quite honestly, there's tons of commentary. Obviously, the thing that you have to bear in mind is human beings have a tendency to complain out loud more than they have a tendency to praise out loud. There's not a huge number of people that are going to be happy in their jobs and then spend lots of time on LinkedIn telling everyone how satisfied and happy they are, because then most people would just think that they were egotistical arse. Whereas unhappy people, and this is true for consumers as well, it's not just about jobs. If people that consume products are more likely to be vocal if they don't like the product than if they do. So you just need to bear that in mind. It seems only a certain persona seems to succeed at Amazon. Am I wrong? Um, I wouldn't say that there is a single persona that is successful at Amazon. There's probably a group of personas that are successful at Amazon and a group of personas that are not successful at Amazon. But I don't think it's as simple as I don't think it's binary. You have to be this type of person and only that type of person. And if you aren't that type of person, you're not going to succeed, because otherwise, the people that I would have worked with and Yevgeny would have worked with would all have been exactly the same type of people, and they weren't. I worked with introverts, extroverts, creative people, analytic people, very ambitious, forward-footed people, other more relaxed, not ambitious, but less, I don't know, forward-footed people. So the answer to your question is yes, do your research, but we would tell you that about any organization. And no, I don't think a single persona will be successful at Amazon, but there are groups of personas that will and groups of personas that won't. Have you got a different opinion to that, Evgeny, or anything to add?
No, I'd say as far as it's how you define a persona, right? At the very bottom, when they interview you, they do want to see a culture fit because their culture is the 16 leadership principles. That's basically it. Outside of that, there are variations.
Well,
Mm.
that, but even within the leadership principles, right? There's different amounts of those leadership principles you can lean into, and that's kind of how you get the diversity of employees in Amazon. You'll get people who are like really, really, really strong at dive deep, then their next one is I'll write a lot, then their next one is deliver results, and then they're equally as good at bias for action and ownership, and then at the bottom they're kind of really poor at think big. And then you'll have other people who are incredible at think big, and then learn and be curious is their next one. So even though you've got those 16, they manifest themselves in different combinations at different weights with different people. And that's how you get the diversity.
That is true. That is true. All right. Let's go to Ashraf. Okay. Are Amazon interviewers trained on how to score candidates' stories, or does it depend on the interview experience? And if they're trained, is the bar raiser given extensive training to score? The answer is it's not simple. It's yes on everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Um,
yeah,
well,
with one caveat,
yeah, I was
which
going to
is
say,
the, you can train human beings all you want. Well, once you let them loose, I mean, all sorts of variations happen, right? Some interviewers remember their training well and they try to follow it. Some don't. Some try to follow it as much as they can, but they just don't remember it well. Some interviewers, you know, God forbid. So again, various variations with human beings. I think my experience is that on average, once folks go through the training, they tend to stick to the training. But there are definitely some outliers, and the outliers come from all sorts of reasons and backgrounds. So I don't know. How would you answer this question, Gigi?
yeah, I mean, in terms of being trained for interview, yeah, everyone's trained on exactly the same material. And as you say, some people take it more seriously than other people. Other people have carryovers from previous roles that they just can't let go of. The final part, though, if is a bar raiser given extensive training to score the answer? No, a bar raiser isn't given any more training on how to assess your answer than anybody else is. The extra training that a bar raiser gets is how to manage a debrief and how to get the right quality data out of the interviewers and get that discussion closed on a decision. So bar raisers are not necessarily more skilled interviewers than anybody else that might interview you. There is a certain correlation between bar raisers being a better quality interviewer just because they do more interviews, not because they're bar raisers, if you think about the relationship or the dynamic between causality and correlation. But when it comes to your training as a bar raiser, your training as a bar raiser has nothing really to do with interviewing. It's about managing the process and managing the debrief. Okie dokie. Shall we? Oh, actually, is it? Are we at the 30-minute mark?
Fancy entertainment time.
Yes, the entertainment. That's like the loosest definition of what we're about to show them that we could possibly come up with. But okay, folks, so very briefly, we're just going to pause here because we have a request for you. This request is obviously, you can tell we put a massive amount of effort into this YouTube channel, into our Heartbeat community and the tools that we've built within our Heartbeat community, and also our blog on our website. Incredible free content that we've put many, 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 many hundreds of hours into, I would say at this point. Free, and we're happy to share it with you. But in return, we ask one tiny thing, and that tiny thing is whenever you watch a piece of our content, please give it a thumbs up, a like, and ideally a comment as well. What that does is it tells the algorithm that, number one, it has served this content to the right person, and number two, that that person enjoys this content. What that then does is drives our content up in terms of where it ranks in the algorithm, which will mean that other people like you who are looking for very honest, actionable, detailed feedback about how to prepare for their Amazon interview will get that content rather than some vague or overly specific, not relevant to them, or not even from an Amazonian type content that we all know is out there in YouTube. So for the next 10 seconds, I'm just going to play a little bit of media for you, and I will ask you to please just give this content a like. I can see how many people on my second screen here have liked it, so I will know whether anybody's paid attention to my request. But hopefully it's not too much of an enormous ask to ask you to do that in return for what we're giving you here today and the hundreds of hours that are already in the YouTube channel. So let's just run VC. I say this every week, so apologies everyone if you've heard it before. Some of these are a little bit loud. I do not know how to turn down the volume on these things on YouTube. So if you have earphones on like me, you might just want to pop your earphones back, which I won't do because I've just had my ear pierced. And if I do that, it's going to hurt. So I'm going to pull mine forwards and you can all pull yours forward or back. So I'm going to play it now, and then please do like the stream.
Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream. 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 Like the stream.
Okay. Every time I hear that final note, I think I have no idea how I got there.
Every time I watch it, I'm getting the South Park vibe, the Kyle's mom song. Anyway.
Right. Chocolate salty balls. Anyway, folks, so I hope you enjoyed that. I have seen a few extra likes go up, but if you didn't get a chance to like it, please do, before you hang up, just give us a little thumbs up. Hopefully it's not too much to ask you. All right, so let's pick our next one. Let's go for this one. I think it's me, isn't it? So are you disadvantaged if you reschedule the interview to a later date? Well, it kind of depends on how you're defining disadvantage. The only way that you are disadvantaged if you push your interview back is Amazon runs a first past the post process. So whereas with many other companies, what they do is they kind of do what Yevgeny calls best of the bunch. So they interview a whole load of people, then effectively gather together the evidence of each of those individuals and then compare them and decide who is the best of the bunch, and then move whoever is best of the bunch onto the next round. Or if it's the final round, they decide who is the best of the bunch. That's not how Amazon runs their interview processes. They literally run a little factory, if you like, where people go onto a conveyor belt constantly, and there is just this constant conveyor belt of people moving through resume screening at the same time as someone is having a phone screen one, at the same time as someone else is maybe having a phone screen two, at the same time as someone else is maybe at loop. And it is the first person to successfully make it all the way through loop who gets the job. So the disadvantage you might be in if you were to delay your interview is that if you were headed into loop, let's say, or even if you were headed into phone screen one and you then push your interview back, you kind of step back on the conveyor belt, and anyone who is now in front of you has the opportunity to get that job. So it might well be that the job closes and someone gets that job before you have time to do your interview because you have taken that extra time. That's the only disadvantage. In terms of the kind of the discussion as to whether you should delay your interview, Yevgeny and I, generally our advice is if you really, really don't feel that you're ready, you may as well delay it, because if you don't think you're ready, then in all probability you're probably not ready, and it's almost a fait accompli that you will not do well at that interview. Because it is not a fait accompli that someone else will get in before you, your odds are in favor if you move that interview back. if you have some kind of slight doubts, or if there are just kind of like, I don't fancy it, that type of thing, then perhaps don't risk it. But if you're in a situation where you really don't think you're going to be ready, then better to delay it and maybe risk someone else getting the job before you, but not ending up with a record at Amazon of having failed an interview when you really knew you were going to fail it anyway. That would be our advice. I hope. Did that make sense in a roundabout sort of way?
Totally. Okay. Next one. Hello, Day One team. I am scheduled for my third loop in the last 2 years. This is my first time studying for the loop process. I have learned so much from your videos. Any advice for a third time looper? So it may sound like an extremely unique situation to be a third time looper, but actually it's not as unique. In a good way, because like we have seen, Gigi and I, Gigi will keep me honest here, we've seen all sorts of journeys into Amazon, including I remember one guy who it took him 3 years into Amazon, and he had rejections, and he had down levels which he rejected himself, and then he had an up level, and everything else in between. So well done for you for persevering, and it's great that you're keeping steady and you're preparing for the loop this time. It's great. The only thing that I would advise, and this is, just because you're so experienced, is that you invest in a full scale prep content. So the reason why we've got to work with folks who had these long journeys is because at the end, the successful end of their journey, before they got the offers into Amazon, they invested into in our prep content. So I would say just get yourself Amazon interview success system, get yourself into our community, connect with the other candidates, use our AI tools, and yeah, and if you feel like it, get us into one-on-one coaching with you. That's the only thing I can do. I know it sounds like I sold you something, which I did, but I think given your journey, that's probably the only recommendation that I can give you. Well, otherwise, well done for taking it with a lot more, I guess, effort and prep this time. Anything you add?
Nope, nothing to add. So I'll just grab a quick question from Harsh and then I'll find a long one for you. So Harsh wants to know who schedules the meeting for panelists together, the recruitment coordinator or the recruiter? I assume you mean the debrief. Yes, you do mean the debrief. The recruitment coordinator does the coordinating. Strange question. Is there a reason why you're asking that question? Out of curiosity, but yeah, it's just a horrible job, the recruitment coordinator job. It's a nightmare juggling everybody's availability and then people committing to it and then dropping out of it. I swear to God, it's one of the hardest jobs at Amazon for just being able to deliver, because Amazon colleagues are just so unhelpful when it comes to their recruitment coordinators. So lots of respect. And if any of you talk to recruitment coordinators, please thank them for their time. They are actually really hardworking individuals, and much maligned, sometimes, I think. So say thank you when you meet them. Oh, okay. I am preparing for a non-tech program manager role. Okay. And I have my first interview with the hiring manager this Friday. Okay. Do I prepare 2 stories each for the 3 leadership principles told hiring manager? Okay, so there's a bit of a leap there. So I'm going to assume that the hiring manager has told you specifically about 3 leadership principles for the role. And if that's the case, then I would take that quite seriously and I would prepare 2 stories each for those 3 leadership principles. If it's only one interview on Friday, then there's no way you would get through more than 3 leadership principles. So unless they're a real meanie, which I doubt they are, I would suspect that they wouldn't have pointed you in the wrong direction. So yeah, if I was in your situation, I would prepare 2 answers for 3 LPs.
Cool. Next one. Right. So I declined an AWS Senior Solutions Architect offer in November initially, and then accepted later, but then declined it due to the medical reasons, and then reached out again, and they've hired someone already. Will the recruiter consider me again? And the follow up is, can I email the hiring manager again in 2 months? George Bagarov. Depending on what was happening there that you didn't share in here, and let's assume that there was nothing else, no other details, nothing. I guess nothing. I want to say sinister, but there's no other undercurrent. Literally, you rejected an offer due to medical reasons, and then you want to see if you're going to be eligible for roles again. I can't think of reasons purely based on the information that you've shared why you should be ineligible, unless there's something else that you're not sharing. Purely based on what you've shared, it doesn't look like, to me, it doesn't look like there's anything there that should prevent you from being considered again. If anything, the fact that you already made an offer in the past for someone who is looking to close a role. If I was a recruiter, I would actually take it as a good sign that you have been pre-cleared for some roles, or then you have a stamp of approval on that profile. So that would be my response to your first question, and I'll respond to your second question, and then I'll get Gigi to weigh in as well. Can I email the hiring manager again in 2 months? If the question is to see if the hiring manager will be hiring for any other roles, if you're very polite, if you come across as motivated and very keen to be considered and highly committed to taking the role, should you be successful again, I don't see why not. If I was a hiring manager and that happened, and I had a very nice candidate who was offered a role before but couldn't take it for very legitimate reasons, I wouldn't. I actually find it quite nice that you're keeping in touch and you're keeping yourself on the radar, and I would always encourage you to apply. But I don't know, Gigi, how would you take this one?
Yeah, I mean, if I was the hiring manager, I would give the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, fine. You declined it, we convinced you, you accepted it, and then you got sick, so you had to decline it. Okay, fine. Life happens. But I would say don't do that again. If you get another offer, either accept it and take it or decline it and move on. Because after a while, what you'll start to do is present a pattern. And Amazonians are good at anything. It's identifying patterns of behaviors. And that could have some longer term implications for your application at Amazon. So for the moment, I would be happy to accept the benefit of the doubt if I was the hiring manager, but I would be very miffed if you did it to me again. Okay, so Ashraf, this is a three-parter. So in many videos, it's been suggested to prepare at least 2 examples for each leadership principles. Yes, we've already said that in this session. Could you please clarify what this means? Okay, does it mean we should generally have 2 stories for ownership? But there are many different questions that could be asked about ownership. Yes, for example, if you prepare 2 stories for ownership, but one question asked doesn't quite match, how do I handle it given there are various questions that could be asked in ownership? Great. Okay, so there is an easy way to solve this problem for yourself, Ashraf, and there is a slightly harder way of solving this problem for yourself, which is you are absolutely right. There are different flavors, we like to call it facets, of each individual leadership principle, and different questions pertain to those different facets. What we have done with our digital course is essentially broken down those facets. So if you take the free customer obsession one course that we're going to give you at the end, you'll see customer obsession has 4 different facets to it. So we explain what those different facets are, and that then gives the candidate an opportunity to identify story or situations, I must use the right S, to identify situations from their career past that includes one or more of those facets. By doing that, that then means that if they have all of those facets covered in 2 stories, it doesn't matter which question they get asked, one or the other of their stories is going to be able to be used for any question that an Amazonian might come up with. So we have done all of that hard work for you in our digital course. We break down what those different facets are, and then we explain to you what the interviewer is looking for in your answer. And between those 2 pieces of information, what you're able to do is identify the right scenario from your career history and develop a narrative that will give the interviewer what they're looking for in terms of the behaviors that they're looking for that leadership principle. So that's the easy way of doing it. The harder way of doing it is doing it on your own. So reading through the actual leadership principles themselves and coming up with your own version of what those different flavors of the leadership principles might look like. And then having identified what those different flavors of the leadership principles might look like, thinking about for yourself what the different behaviors the interviewer might be looking for that align to those different flavors, facets of the leadership principle, and then making sure that the two stories that you come up with encompass the different flavors that you have created, and then the situations encompass those different flavors that you have created, and that the stories that you craft encompass the behaviors that you think the interviewer may be looking for. That is the way to build your story bank that will ensure that you at least have, let's say, 85% coverage of any possible question that the interviewer might ask you. Anything to add, Yevgeny?
No, that's the one. Okay. Right. C, I think. If I am contacted by 2 recruiters and I'm not selected by one team, can I still interview for the other team? Yes.
Yes, that's
Sure.
it. Moving on.
Moving on. Probably pick another one. Okay. The work experience requirement for my role is 3 years experience. Do I have to give very high level stories? Does it seem 3 years it junior or mid level? Also, is job description review part of the
I'm going to assume that last bit is, do you get that as part of the course? No, you don't. That's a separate service.
Yeah, no, it's a separate service. And then work experience requirement. Okay, do I have to give very high level? Do you mean low? Do you mean detailed? Okay, moving aside, basically, if you're very junior, there's not a lot of expectation that you're going to go into a lot of details in your responses because there's just not a lot of details to share. Because if you're like most people who are more junior as opposed to more senior, then the problems that you work on, they're typically pound for pound will be less complex, ever so less complex. And so you would probably naturally not have as much detail to share. Um, so I would say it's hard to tell you exactly what's enough detail, but not enough detail. But I would say for if it's a role that requires 3 years of experience, I'm gonna have to assume it's an L4 or an L5, but it seems to be a bit too junior for an L5. I don't know. If it's an L4 to an L5, I think a 4-minute answer will probably be sufficient. What would you say, Gigi?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's hard to know because you could be an L5 with 3 years experience in like a sales job, but to get a product manager role at L5, you're
No
probably going to
chance.
have more experience than that. Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to know. But yeah, somewhere between 3 or 4 minutes, I suppose, for an L4 would be about right. Okay. Let me pick the next one. All right, so let's all I'm just going to bring Ali up here because I just want us all to send some good luck vibes to Ali. So good luck, Ali.
Ali, watch this.
No, it's
Okay.
not working. Now
It's
you
not
look like
working.
an Egypt. You just look like an Egypt now. That's hilarious. Okay, moving on then. Okay, let's pick this one. Okay. So, your name is Aziz, and you've been selected to interview for a senior procurement manager position. I also did a handwritten interview prior to phone. Okay, what this is weird. I also did a written interview prior to the phone screen. I'm waiting on feedback now. Okay, this is new. I've never heard of anyone doing a writing exercise before phone screen. You might have to tell us more about this, Aziz. However, the recruiter started negotiating the salary with me before moving to the first interview phase. That I find unusual. Anyhow, my question is that will I still be able to negotiate sign-on bonus? Hang on. Last one here. Will I be able to negotiate the salary if I become successful the rest of the interviews? Yes. So it's I don't think you're recruiter was negotiating the salary with you. What they were doing was sharing with you what the salary range was so that they can get a feel for, is that going to work for you? Because sensibly, I think your recruiter is trying to make you aware of what is in the realms of possibility, so that if it isn't going to work for you, she can save herself some time, save you some time, and save a whole bunch of interviewers time at Amazon, because there's no point in interviewing you if you're never going to accept the role because the salary is too low. So I don't think that's not negotiating per se, that's just sharing information with you. In terms of, once you've said yes, that compensation seems fine to me, and then you get to the very end of the process and you decide that actually you want to push for more, that's fine. All you have to do is literally say to the recruiter, when you start to have the actual negotiation, I know we established this as being the acceptable range at the beginning of the process, but I have since then done some further research into the role and into the reasonable market rate for what I'm doing. And this is what I would like, or I would expect to be an acceptable offer for the role. And you can negotiate that way. So it isn't a kind of a one and done situation where you put a number on the table at the very beginning and then you're stuck with that. That's not the case. But at the same time, if you want to move from that position by the time you get to the end of the process, then it has to be based on something. You can't just say, oh, I've changed my mind. You have to at least go back and say, I've done some more research, I've found out some more data, etc. And I think I probably undercalled it last time. This is more around what I'm looking for. Yevgeny, would you add anything? Because you're our negotiation guru.
No, you've summed it really well. Don't be ever afraid to negotiate. Negotiate until they either tell you, yes, here's your offer, or this is our last and final offer. Okay. Right. Let's see. Here we go. Hello, team. I'm scheduled for interview with the hiring manager tomorrow. I'm assuming that's tomorrow.
Yes, and I love the way that's written. I think that's super cool. My dyslexic brain loves that.
What the
TMRW in capitals.
capitals? Okay. The role did not mention any years, but I got to know it's a senior role. What should I expect? I have 3 years of experience, and I said the hiring manager liked my resume. I'm not entirely sure what your question relates to in terms of what should you expect. Should expect a job interview. No, but I honestly do
There's
not
nothing else to
understand.
say. There's nothing else to say. If
You
you
know
want to
what?
know what to expect, go look at the channel.
Can I just see, right? Do we have any clarifications there at all? No, we don't have. Listen, if we manage to get to you, why don't you just clarify what your question is in terms of expectations, and then we'll get back to you. So let's keep going. My Amazon recruiter turned me on to your channel and content, Gigi. I have my phone interview with the hiring manager Tuesday. That's ecstatic.
Thank your recruiter for us.
Beautiful. Moving on. I recently applied for an AM role and was rejected after the loop. The feedback was that I have potential as an Amazonian, and they encouraged me to reapply, providing a few areas to work on. Will this affect my next attempt, or will anything from a previous interview be considered? Right. I don't think it's going to affect your chances negatively, provided there was nothing sinister that happened during that loop. If it was just a bog standard rejection because you didn't raise the bar, but on leadership principles you were seen as an Amazonian. That's a good sign. So keep reapplying. I would trust your recruiter. That's the only thing that I would say. Would you have any other perspective on this, Gigi?
No. No other perspective. Okay, let's pick. I think we've only got a couple left now. So, folks, we're going to wind up if we don't have any more questions. We do have time for a few more. So let's just pick some of these last ones. So Harsh again. I see a lot of other jobs related to my design profile. Can I start applying to those or wait for the result? I would apply. There's no reason why you shouldn't apply. And then your recruiter will see those applications coming through. So it might well give them a little bit of a chivvy at the backside to get moving with getting your result through. But yeah, there's no problem with having multiple applications on the go at any one time at Amazon. That should be fine. And that's it. We have no more questions. So, folks, what we're going to do is we're going to share with you our freebies. And then if anyone pops up with a question whilst we're doing the spiel about the freebies, we can go back to it. But for now, I wish to direct your attention to this URL here. At the end of this URL, there are 3 incredible freebies, like seriously incredible freebies that you really need to go and get. The first is, as I was describing to you earlier, a little bit of a taster course of our digital course. This one is focused on customer obsession, and it breaks down those different facets of customer obsession that I was talking about earlier. There are 4 of them. It also goes into detail about what the interviewer is actually looking for from you in terms of behaviors that demonstrate customer obsession. And there's a little mock interview there, me interviewing myself. You would never know it was me twice. And that will just give you a flavor of kind of what the interview experience might look like at Amazon. The second thing that does then is we also have what we call the interview preparation tool pack at the end of that link. The interview preparation tool pack is an amazing bank of plausible Amazon interview questions. They are not the exact Amazon interview question bank. We could not and would not give that to you, but because we are so familiar with what Amazon is looking for, we are in a great position to come up with plausible questions that are very likely directionally correct. So you can use that as a mechanism for practicing how you might respond to a question if it came up in the interview. If you take out either of those things, it will take you to our Heartbeat community to be able to access those 2 products. And in that community, you will find 4,000 odd other people who have in the past or are currently applying for Amazon. And there is a channel there to meet up with other people and do buddy interviews with them. There's also, Yevgeny mentioned it earlier in the session, an incredible little AI bot that he has created for us called Andy. And basically, Andy has been trained on all of the information that exists in the YouTube channel. So if you want somewhere to go where you can ask questions without having to actually trawl through hours of video, despite the fact that it took me a long time to create that video, I have to let that go. If you want a more efficient way of trawling through the YouTube channel, Andy is your man. You can ask him any question, and if it's in the YouTube channel, Andy will give you the answer. So that is what is at the end of that link. I really strongly suggest you go and use it. I'm going to tell you that I'm confident no one else has got freebies out there that are as good as the freebies that we're offering you. So please do go and make use of them. We have some more questions that have popped up, Yevgeny, and we've got like 2 more minutes. So do you want to pick one and I'll pick one and then we can close off the session?
Okay. Is there a limit to how many attempts you can make at Amazon? How would you know if your profile is locked and you're no longer going to be considered for selection? I am unaware of any limit on the number of tries that you can have at Amazon. I have previously hired candidates who had multiple attempts to get in. Also, what happens is, and something that you don't see, is that once your profile is inside Amazon's database, recruiters might proactively apply your profile to other roles, or they call it tag your profile against other roles, if they believe that your profile is relevant. And sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't, and so your profile gets rejected. And so what you often see is, for some candidates that go to interview with you, you have multiple application rejection, but it wasn't the candidate that was applying. It was internally their profile was being pushed for consideration. So unless something sinister happens in that interview, there is no limit. So that's all I would say. Anything you'd add?
Nope, nothing I would add. So I'm going to just grab two because one is super quick and the other is super quick, and then we can wrap up in 10 seconds. Okay, so do L8/senior role interviews differ from the other roles? Nope, they're exactly the same. The process is exactly the same with all of the deviations that I described to you earlier. Okay, so then David, so you've got an interview as a senior product manager. You have a high-level walking deck with your background in it, which will highlight some other related experience. You're asking, should you provide it to the recruiter? You can. I've got to be honest with you, I doubt very much anyone's going to look at it. Amazonians very rarely have any interest in PowerPoint slides, but there's no reason not to share it. What harm can it do? So yeah, pass it on to your recruiter and maybe they'll pass it to the team and maybe they'll read it, maybe they won't, but it's not going to do you any harm. Okay, that's it for today then, folks. For those of you who have interviews coming up, we all, I'm sure, send you our very, very best wishes and keep our fingers crossed for you. If you are still going through the process, please do come back next week and we're happy to answer any questions you have. And in the meantime, if you are working through the channel, as I said, please just do us a tiny favor in return for the effort we put in for you and like each video, or if you have a question or a comment, just drop it into the YouTube channel. Pretty much we'll respond to 100% of the comments on the YouTube channel, which I'm sure you'd have seen streams and streams of them. So please do just engage with the content and that would be awesome. So until then, folks, thank you very, very much for joining us and have a safe and healthy week ahead. Take care.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good luck.
Bye,
Bye
everyone.
bye.